press. And thank you very much for coming. And what I'm intending to do over the next 20 minutes is to give a short review of the performance of 2023, as well as what we're intending to do in 2024. And then we'll ask my colleague, Sun Ming, who is the chairman of TCBS, to share maybe for 15 minutes a little bit more details on our securities company, given the fact that wealth management is such an important pillar of our strategy. So let me start first, and I will keep it very short and talk about 3 points first. What was really the performance in 2023? What did we do in terms of the strategy execution for the period of 2020 to 2025? And what are we intending to do for 2024? So to start with, let me start in saying 2023 was not the easiest year. I think when we gave the guidance in this AGM a year ago, we basically said that probably this would be a year with a lot of headwinds, and that we would start managing through these headwinds, that we would probably see a rough start to 2023, but that the beginning would not be exactly what the year would end up. So we were actually expecting a better half in 2023, and that's exactly what happened. So through that, I think it's fair to say that we still manage the bank to be in a very, very good shape. So we are in one of our key strategic thrusts, which is actually CASA. We are back to 40% roughly. And when it comes to the overall ratio of NFI, which is probably critical in order to achieve superior return on assets, we are still the number one in terms of absolute non-fee or fee income, but also in the ratio of fee income to overall TOI, where the market leaders. Our asset quality, which was a lot of concerns, and there are a lot of analysts out there who are basically having these concerns, has held up very, very strongly, and we are amongst the best performing banks in the country. At the same point in time, we did very well with our customers. We increased our customers by 2.6 million, a number we've never seen beforehand. And also, when it comes to customer satisfaction, we're number 2 in the industry. So despite all these headwinds, we actually perform very well. So what I try to do is to give you a little bit an idea how that manifests itself in the numbers. So first one is GDP, FDIs, all the key macroeconomic indicators. If you see the first half of 2023 and you see the second half of 2023 are looking very different. So the GDP growth was only 3.7%, which was then coming to 6.1% in the second half. And you can go through all these different elements. On average, you actually saw an uptick. And that's even more stark when you look into some of the numbers which are important for banks. So and it all started actually with the development of the interest rates. If you see at the top of the chart, you see the deposit interest rates, which after the crisis of SCB, will really start skyrocketing thanks to the intervention of the SBB, thanks to the liquidity management and all that. These interest rates were actually coming down quite significantly. So you see that basically 300 basis points over the year moving down. And what that did is, it did a couple of things. So first one, you see actually that in the beginning, deposits as well as interest rate, as well as credits were actually relatively slow. But then in the second half, especially in the last quarter, you saw this very, very steep growth coming in. If you see areas like real estate, bond, the first half was actually a massive shrinkage, a massive contraction from where it started coming all up. Real estate market, drop, coming back. The only area which still is actually under pressure is bank assurance. And for us, as a key player in the wealth market, bond market, bank assurance, real estate market, it's very clear that this actually had an impact. So the first half being such loaded with headwinds, it was very hard to come out of it and make it all up in the second half. And because we were seeing that, we knew that this was happening, this is actually what we guided at the beginning of last year. So the overall performance still is actually very strong. So if you see in terms of total credit, we are well ahead of our peers. When it comes to our NIM, yes, it came down, but we're still industry leading on the NIM side. Customer deposits were actually going up quite high. Our cost of funds, which were increasing clearly, but still below what the industry has. And then the only one which actually came down but was within the guidance was profit before tax, which we were setting at 22.9, still 4% above the guidance. But as I said, it was very clear how this year would be planning out. And overall, I think the bank actually performed very, very well in that environment. So just to give you a couple of more numbers, you see the credit growth. At the same point in time, deposits, there were a lot of questions around CASA. Is CASA coming back? You see that last year, we still grew CASA 37%, well above the other forms of funding, which actually means that our CASA ratio was going up. And at 40% roughly where we are right now, we're still somewhere at a toss with the market leaders, which is somewhere between military bank and ourselves. But again, it provides a very, very good funding base and also strategic flexibility for what we want to achieve this year. In terms of customers, you see that on the customer side, usually we were running around 1 million customers per year. This year, or last year, we actually increased it by 2.6 million. Key of that was actually our partnership with the Win Life ecosystem, which added more than 1 million additional customers, and all of these customers were actually acquired digitally at the core. When we look at NFI, which is, as I said, one of the key ingredients why we are having the profitability and the high return on assets, our overall numbers, even in that environment, if you think about bank assurance under pressure, bond market under pressure, we still grew it by 10%, which means actually that we have a very, very robust, diversified income base, which allows us actually to continue on that path. Overall, we have 14% market share on NFI. If you take our overall asset or credit book, it's probably only 5%. So we are doing exceptionally well on that side. And again, we want to continue on that area. Risk management, probably the most important piece last year. And I spoke here last year, I said that probably is the most important thing we need to keep under control, which is the risk in our book. You see actually that we perform very well. There are a lot of things coming from and systems we have put in place, processes and all of this. But if you take and look into the results, our NPL is standing somewhere at 1.2% versus the industry median of 2.0%. Our credit cost is roughly at 0.8%, and our loan loss reserves are over and above 100%. So despite all what analysts looked at, despite of a lot of anxiety in the real estate market, and we are very much exposed to the real estate sector, our choices of where to compete, which customers to go, where to lend, actually has paid out very, very well over the last year. And again, as we go forward, you will actually see that we are pretty confident that this will continue to be the case. When it comes to balance sheet strength, when we look at our capital adequacy ratio, when we look into our financing, when it comes to loan to deposit ratio, when it actually comes to areas like the medium to short-term to medium lending ratio, you see that all of them are actually well below the requirements of SPV, but they're also actually leading in a lot of areas in the market, especially when it comes to capital. We're still probably the most well-capitalized bank. What happened is, you see a slight decrease. There was a lot of growth in the last quarter of 2023, where there was a massive spike. Because we actually really wanted to take full advantage of that, we lent a lot. Because the profits are only attributed at a later stage, this number basically came down, but we're expecting it to go back to 15% core tier 1 which is where we are feeling comfortable, and again, which would be putting us well ahead of the competition in Vietnam, but which is also actually in line with ASEAN averages. All of that, and again, I don't go through all of these, but I think what is important, it's not just recognized by our peers, competitors, but actually also others when they look into the bank. There are a lot of awards, a lot of firsts to our name, and again, I think that should give you comfort that this bank is actually on the right track. And again, what we will show and release is that in 2024, recently, there's a lot of more of these accolades coming in. Not that it's important, but I think for us, it's just an external benchmark to make sure that we know that we are on the right track. So the performance, yes, it was a difficult year, but it was managed according to the expectations. In some of the areas, actually better than the expectations. But what I believe is actually even more important, just the performance, is did we continue on our strategy? Did we still do the right things? So I just want to go very, very shortly and briefly and describe a little bit what the bank did in order to make sure that we achieve our strategic targets. We set this out as the core pillars for our strategy or milestones to achieve until 2025. CASA ratio of 55%, just saying we are having a funding position which allows us to compete where we want to compete. A high NFI to TR ratio, because that means we are not just providing balance sheet, but we're providing a large set of banking services. Target return on equity, because we really want to make sure that we are deploying capital very effectively. And that should result in a market capitalization which would be rewarding for the shareholders. And in order to do that, we basically said there are three things we want to do. We want to really invest in digital and technology, we want to invest in data, and we want to invest in people in order to create new value propositions, new offerings for our customers. And for that, over this period of time, we basically said we want to invest more than $500 million. So every year, more than $2 trillion in just technology beside everything else. So what do we do? First one is, I think we are pretty much done with the transformation of our whole technology stack. I think we are roughly 2 to 3 years ahead of everyone else in the industry. There's always a lot of questions, so what are the benefits? What's coming out of it? Can you describe it? And so I started to put a couple of numbers in so that you just get a feeling. First one is, at this point in time, 33% of all our profits are coming purely from digital channels. And digital channels calculated in the most conservative way. That means whenever one of our customers at any point in time would touch a branch, we would not count that in this number. So 33% is completely digital. So that is a number which probably starts getting close to the best what you would see in any market globally. Secondly, whenever we are serving a customer through this new technology, our cost-income ratio is around 10 to 15% lower. And not 10 to 15% like out of 35, 10% would be 3%. It's really 10 to 15% lower. So the bank right now roughly has a CI ratio of 35%. If we would just do it only on that, we would actually be at 20%. And the last one, which I think is probably most important, is we interact on average with our customers 50 times a month. And so 50 times a month, a customer comes to us, we learn about the customer, we understand what this customer is actually really doing. And why is that important? It comes to the next section, which is the data. We invested a lot of money on the data side, and I think why we're ahead on the technology side, on the data side, we are even more ahead. A lot of these things right now, we're benchmarking this, is probably really state of the art. You would find it very hard to see any other bank in the whole of ASEAN, probably even globally, to come up with these kind of solutions. So we are storing right now around 2 petabytes of data, but that, to try to translate it, it's roughly 500 billion pages of documents. Every day we're recording 5 billion records. A customer right now is described with roughly 1,000 attributes. And probably by the middle of the year we will go to around 3,000 to 4,000 attributes. And all of this allows us to understand our customers much, much better, which then translates into real value. So right now, usually, a lot of banks would say, well, we have, let's say, the affluent, and then the mass affluent, and the mass customers. Right now, we are already starting to have around 100 segments, which we will be treating very differently. When we run certain campaigns on the back of that technology, we have an uptick of 700% how customers responding to us. And we probably send right now around 200 million messages just over the last 2 or 3 months to customers to inform them about services. So a lot of these things are completely new capabilities which allow us to run our business very differently. People. Again, people are at the bottom and the core of all of this. We, again, getting rewarded and appreciated as one of the best places to work. We really try to find the best people in Vietnam, overseas, Vietnamese, non-Vietnamese, returning Vietnamese, in order to create the best bank to serve our customers. And we create a lot of new products. For a long time, we actually were probably a little bit behind, but right now, just in 2023, all these things came together to start creating new value, new offerings, better offerings, which is appreciated by our customers. So that is the NPS score. What are our customers recommending us to their friends, to their families, which is one of the highest scores in the industries, but the other one is also our brand. Techcombank as a brand is one of the most valuable banking brands in the country on the basis of that. And even more encouraging, what it allows us actually going forward, we can scale the business very differently. So just over the last 3 years, give you some ideas. As I said, we increased the numbers from 2020 to 2023 just basically by 2.6. At the same point in time, the number of employees were actually flat. So we're serving more and more customers with the same amount of people, which actually reduces the cost to serve. But most importantly, if you look into the last one, the income per employee, just over the last 3 years, even when we had the most difficult headwinds, is still going up by 150%. So as we go forward, as we have all this in place, right now it's just a question to have better product, better solutions, and bring these to our customers. So therefore, just to give an idea of how we look at 2024, I said it is 2023 is a tale of 2 halves. The first half very muted, but the second half going up, and we think actually we'll continue on that momentum. So we believe we will be seeing a 6% GDP growth, which is in line also on the guidance of the government. We think that's actually doable, but you also see that the secular trends are still completely intact, even with all these noises. We have a very young population. We actually have a high digital adoption, one of the highest in the world. And we have people who are becoming more affluent. So as they become more affluent, they need more banking products. And just to give you an idea, there's a curve, and I think that's universally true, which just says, as country becomes richer, as a country becomes more affluent, people will use more banking services. And already, when you see Vietnam, which is one of the dots, but already in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, which is a little bit different, you see that probably in 2030, in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, you will be at the levels which are probably even higher than Malaysia today, or Thailand. So we will be in a very, very different banking environment, and all of that will say, do you have a mortgage? Do you have an insurance? Do you have a bond? How are you investing your money? And I think that is where we want to be. And I think that is also why we thought we show and give you a better insight into TCBS, which is one of the key companies in the country which is really leading that effort. So I think we are very well positioned. We will continue on what we are doing in the past, We will make sure that we secure our funding base, which is probably, and even shown during the turbulent times of SCB, the most important piece is stable funding. So that's one. The second one is we want to make sure that credit quality stays as high as it is right now. We will continue to be very prudent in where are we lending. We will start diversifying the book. We will go deeper into retail customers. We will deeper go into SME customers, but we will always make sure that we actually safeguard the quality of our book. That is absolute paramount, and we will not deviate from that. And the last one is, as I said, we will actually continue to look and making sure that we get fee income, other products, not just lending products, because as this country matures, as our customers become more wealthy, they need more support in managing their wealth. So therefore, what we propose to the AGM as profit target for the year is 27.1 trillion, which would be an increase of roughly 18%. Of course, the management team will work very hard to make sure that this is the lower boundary. And again, as I said, given the second half of 2023, we are very, very confident that we can achieve and actually surpass this number. In total credit, that will depend on what will be granted by SBV at this point in time. We shoot at roughly 16%, but again, that can change during the year. And then of course, deposits, all the other elements will be in line with the credit growth in order to make sure that we fulfill all the prudent ratios I've talked about beforehand. Last but not least, the NPL should be staying below 1.5%. We're right now at 1.2%. Again, I think we're very, very comfortable that we can actually achieve these targets. And again, that would put us in a very, very good stead compared to the rest of the banking industry, and would get us also closer to the targets we have set out for 2020-2025 strategy. With that, thank you very much. What I would really like to do, hand it over to the chairman of TCBS to give you a deeper insight, especially around the areas of wealth management, fee income, which is Mr. Zolming. Thank you.
Cảm ơn anh Diên. Thật ra anh Diên nói tiếng Anh trình bày rất là hay.